Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Azeroth Daily for the 2nd of May 2011. My name is TotalBiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of WoW news and comments. In the headlines today, Tier 12 armor, ladies and gentlemen, at least some of it is available over on the US Battle.net website. There are 6 sets to view, including Paladin, Mage, Rogue, Hunter, Death Knight, and Priest, and there are previews from multiple angles. I think the only one that I really dislike has got to be, once again, the Hunter. Yes. Will someone explain to me why a class that is reliant pretty much entirely on doing ranged damage would like to have their peripheral vision and depth perception marred by having a goddamn eye patch? I have no idea. Also, since when the hell did Paladins have 3 eyes? But hey, there you go. You can go and have a look at all of those sets over in the description below this video. Yet more patch 4.2 previews. We've got the Elemental Bonds epic quest line that is coming up, and it's not really called an epic quest line, but one has to assume that it will be. And what's ended up happening is that Thrall has been inexplicably split into 4 different domains of the elemental plane. His spirit through dark magics was cast out there. So that's a little bit unfortunate. It's not exactly what you want to have happen to your day, is it? So, level 85 characters are going to be able to go through a long quest line to try and save him from his elemental cage and stuff like that. And what I will also say is that there's an interesting mention right here. If you have a look at it, there's a mention of traveling to the Skywall, Deepholm, Firelands, and the Abyssal Moor. Now, the Abyssal Moor is also an area. Bear this one in mind, it's not necessarily the dungeon, so it might not be referencing that, since we haven't heard whether or not the Abyssal Moor 5-man dungeon is coming in 4.2, but it would be interesting if it were. You can go out and check out some screenshots as well as some information on this questline by clicking the link in the description below this video. The latest round of hotfixes has been released. Yes, yet more hotfixes. That's to be expected, honestly, after a major patch. And among the things which may interest you is the fact that some of the interrupts that were incorrectly missing targets, such as Spell Lock, Counterspell, and Wind Shear, will no longer miss, so that's a good thing. And also, there's been a number of fixes to raid dungeons and to 5-mans, and thankfully none of these actually seem to come as a nerf either, so that's always a good thing to see. And you can check out the full list in the description below this video. A new batch of community news has been released over on the EU Battle.net site, covering primarily foreign language sites, including the Polish site wowcenter.pl, which has posted a nice summary of patch 4.2 information, as well as translating the developers' answers to the latest Ask the Devs session on guild advancement. Also, the Hungarian site WoW-Hungary has updated their Learn to Play section, and the Czech and Slovak site wowfan.cz has been covering the launch of patch 4.1 and has also created a gameplay video. All this a roundup of this week's comics, as well as noteworthy forum threads in the description below this video. A new art gallery update has come out, and there's quite a few this time. We've got 8 pieces, which are from World of Warcraft Cataclysm. We've got a selection of images representing different dungeons, as well as a couple of battleground images as well that are all available in very large format, so go click on them. And as always, if you want a wallpaper of one of these, just right-click and save as on Download Original, and that should get you exactly what you want. I have to say, I do particularly like the Skywall one. That's really, really good indeed. And finally, great news for those of you who are hoping that Blizzard would do another charity pet, and this time actually give everything to charity, and they have. They've released a new pet called the Cenarian Hatchling, and 100% of the cost of this pet will go to the Japan relief for the tsunami and earthquake efforts, and this is going on until July the 31st, so you do have plenty of time to purchase that one. It will set you back €10 or $10 or £9. Look out for a short video later today that I'll make about this particular pet, so you can have a good look at it before you put your money down. But thanks once again to Blizzard for actually listening to the community that was asking for pets that had 100% charitable donation attached to them. That's really cool of them. And with that, it's time for your Daily Blues. This one is posted by Bacon Samage, who is asking whether or not the new patch has caused the Dungeon Finder to deliberately pick more people from your own realm as opposed to cross-realm groups. And the answer comes in from Zarhym that says, it's not just a coincidence. Many players have actually stated since the release of Dungeon Finder that they like the convenience of the looking for group system, but miss the sense of community. Now, the reason that this is even an issue is that this guy comes from a server that that actually has an awful lot of Brazilian players on it, and this is the Gurabashi server, so there's an awful lot of non-English speaking people. This is an interesting issue considering that there are certain servers in the EU which do this as well. For instance, Warsong used to be, and I don't know if it still is, but it certainly used to be a heavily Russian-populated server, to the point where Russians would actually be trying to push out non-Russian speakers. And now, of course, Russia has their own realms, but still, it can be an issue that foreign language communities do like to gather on specific servers, and English-speaking people actually don't have too much fun when that happens. However, it seems to me that this could be very easily solved, of course, by offering free transfers, which is something, as far as I'm concerned, Blizzard should be doing for every transfer anyway, and then this wouldn't even come up, because at least then people can move off of those particular servers. But whatever the case, that's your answer, folks. There is indeed a system in place where it will now, more often than not, try and match you with people from your realm, unless they can't find anyone. This one is posted by Free Security that believes that the hate over 7 bosses is quite ridiculous, and complaining that there are only 7 bosses on the next tier is absolutely stupid because you haven't actually finished all the other stuff yet. Oh, such a logical fallacy. I hate it when people do this. I really, really do. They don't seem to understand that a lot of people don't care about hard modes. They want to see new and different fights because that's what we had for ages. You can't really expect people who are used to not having hard modes, who are just used to being given more new content as they went through the expansion, to then suddenly accept that it's okay for a raid tier to have 7 bosses on it. That has never happened before, ever. In the history of World of Warcraft, there's never been a tier like that, at least until we got through to Wrath of the Lich King, which was coincidentally when hard mode started coming in. So that's problematic. That's why people don't like it, because a lot of people don't actually care about hard modes, because they are, let's be honest, the same bosses with new mechanics attached to them. It's still the same boss, it's still the same area, it is like upping the difficulty level, it's not like playing a brand new game. Zarhym responds by saying that this ain't Trial of the Crusader and that the place is massive and epic and there's tons of progression content and fun to be had through 4.2, and the actual boss mechanics are pretty incredible. Now, he then goes on to say that 7 is just a number, and I bet that it won't even be a topic of discussion come release of the patch. Well, probably not, because people will be busy playing the patch as opposed to complaining about it. But whatever the case, I still think that Zarhym is sort of dismissing the issue. It's not the size of the dungeon that bothers people. 7 is actually a really good number. There's nothing wrong with having 7 bosses in a dungeon. I've said before, I would prefer several smaller dungeons than massive, great 14 boss things, because I don't like being in the same place every day of the week when I'm raiding. I like to have variety as to where I go, and you don't get that if you have single instance tier raiding. And the problem that I have with it is that this looks like it's going to be the only dungeon on that tier. There's been no other dungeon announced for it, so I don't see why they'd put another one in. And more often than not, they're not going to put another dungeon on the same tier after, say, 5 or 6 months, because, of course, people are already geared up now, so they're ready to move on to the next one. That's the problem with it. It's not the size of the dungeon, it's the fact that there's nothing else along with it in terms of raid content. Zarhym continues by being forced to respond to somebody that said, well, this is the closest that any Blizzard employee has actually ever come to openly admitting that TOC was a festering pile of garbage. Now, Zarhym responds to that by saying, well, he actually did enjoy TOC, but they will certainly admit it wasn't the most epic tier of raiding they've ever released. No, it would in fact be the worst tier of raiding you've ever released, but there you go. They said, we tried out a different format for that raid, and we think it suited its purpose well, but it's not a shocker that it's not a player favorite or a memorable raid. That would be because it's bad. It's as simple as that. So, that's the roundup of that, folks, and that's the problem that I personally have. That's a problem that I know a lot of other people have. People are, of course, more than entitled to disagree with that, but if you want to talk about numbers, then just say, look, there is no tier that's been that small, and I don't count Sunwell because it wasn't a tier in and of itself. As an actual specific tier, TOC is the only one that's been that small in the past, and that was, of course, when Wrath came in, so it's worrying. I have no doubt the dungeon's going to be amazing. I'm just really concerned that if that's going to be all we've got for like 6 months, then I'm going to get really bored of Molten Core 2. And with that, it's time for your daily grind. As we continue the heroic adventures of J.J. Keishan, who is attempting to free Redridge from the evil hordes of the orcs, he decides to construct a field kit, the Bravo Company field kit, and you must use it to stealth your way into a POW camp and rescue some prisoners of war by covering yourself in fox poop and leaves. It's a wonderful little quest that involves some crazy stealth action whereby you have to use distractions to distract. What else would you do? And also use the camouflage, and you have a chloroform ability which allows you to knock out nearby orcs if you happen to get too close. So that is pretty damn awesome. This is a very fun quest line. We are not done with it yet, however, so keep an eye on the future episodes to find out what kind of explosive conclusion we're going to reach. And with that, it's time for your weekly feature. This is Machinimondays. Now, this particular video hasn't exactly got many views, so perhaps we can change that. It's called The Story of Thrug, and it comes in from Thazril. And this is a story all about how an orc's life got tipped. No, I won't do it. I refuse. It's a story about an orc peon who, having finally had enough of backbreaking labor and being whipped and attacked by newbies, ran all the way to Orgrimmar with only the shirt on his back and then became king of the auction house. So it's a nice little story. I like it. If anyone wants to get into being a goblin, for instance, I think they can learn an awful lot from this. And I know people are always asking for auction house and gold making tips, so perhaps you should just watch this video. I like the fact that, one, the story is actually tied into the way the game works with the whole being beaten by newbies thing. He just got beaten by his new apprentice, and of course that references the quest in the Valley of Trials, whereby you have to go and hit the peons to wake them up. I like that. That's a very cool thing, and not enough stories do that. I think that not enough machinimas that are story-driven are really based within WoW. They're just using the WoW engine. This makes sense because it's something you can relate to. I like that a lot. It's mostly filmed in the game engine. Admittedly, there are some fairly jerky model viewer scenes, which are not so amazing. But it's got a really good voice actor as well. Andrew Armstrong is the sole voice actor for this, and while his microphone isn't exactly the best quality, he turns out to be an absolutely fantastic narrator. So to me, this is a really nice, simple, and enjoyable movie, and I hope this guy comes up with some more. The visual quality could be a bit better. For instance, it's in 480p and also letterboxed, so the resolution, as you can see on the screen, looks pretty bad. But regardless, those are things that are easily fixed, whereas talent is a little harder to acquire. So on that basis, I'm going to give this movie a hearty 4 trolls out of 5. You can click the link in the description below this video to watch it, and please let him know who sent you. And with that, it's time for the mailbox. This one comes in from Party, who says, Dear TB, ever since the release of 4.1, there seems to be an increase of bad DPS, and by bad, I don't just mean their DPS. I've gotten constant groups of people in full PvP gear wondering why we are wiping to easy bosses. Why are they dying so easily, and above all, refusing to take help when help is given? For instance, I spent 2.5 hours and went through countless DPS on Zanzil in Zul'Gurub due to DPS that stood in the fire, had overall low DPS, and refused to click cauldrons. So with Blizzard's vote to kick system, it was made to make groups a little more enjoyable when someone isn't doing their job, but it also has an internal cooldown based off God knows what, which results in maybe being able to vote kick one person every several hours. What exactly is the point in this feature? Being able to kick one person every X amount of hours doesn't make groups any more enjoyable when the person is just replaced by somebody who is just as bad, if not worse, especially since these new heroics are basically DPS checks and people expect to have their hands held. Yeah, it's dumb, isn't it? I've always believed in majority rule when it comes to World of Warcraft. I don't believe in it necessarily in real life. Representing minorities, kind of important. In World of Warcraft, not so much. If the minority is some idiot that is holding up your group, why is it that 4 is not greater than 1? I hate the fact that Blizzard has taken the ability to make decisions out of the hands of players because of a few bad apples that decided, oh, well, we're just going to kick everyone that we don't like the name of or who happens to be playing the wrong race or whatever. You should never ever let a few bad apples dictate your policy. Allow people to kick whoever the hell they damn well please if they happen to have a majority vote. Internal cooldowns is ridiculous. There's no way that you can guarantee that the next person is going to be a golden god of World of Warcraft as opposed to the other guy that can barely find where his hotkeys are. Now, this is an aside, but I'm going to say it anyway. Why exactly is it that people in PvP gear are able to queue for dungeons? Why can they not just lower the item level of the PvP gear so it doesn't actually meet the requirements? I can certainly understand maybe using 1 or 2 pieces, especially a weapon. That'll be good. But having an entire set of PvP gear, then wandering into a dungeon is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You don't get a full set of PvE gear and run into arenas, do you? And if you do, you expect to die. There used to be a time when that actually worked, but they changed that, and rightly so. PvE should not interfere with PvP, and vice versa. They are completely separate things and systems within the game. Why can they not just lower the item level on PvP gear? What, is it going to upset some PvPers because their magical imaginary gear number has gone down? It makes no bloody difference. None whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, if you've got resilience on your gear, it should lower your item level as opposed to raise it. I've actually noticed that. Have you seen that? A lot of the gear that you can craft, for instance, that has resilience on it is actually a higher item level. So there you go. That's just dumb. So those are two things that I hope get changed. This one comes in from Ghost Law that says, my question to you is about gear. We currently have two different specs that we can choose from, a primary and a secondary spec. However, most DPS classes are sole DPS classes, such as the Mage class. The Fireball raid spec requires different gemming and forging than an Arcane Mage. What do you think about Blizzard putting in an option that not only allows you to switch specs on the fly, but also allows you to do it with gemming and reforging? This would give you the opportunity to pick different specs for each different fight without having to spend all that time changing your gear around. What are your thoughts on this, and do you think that this is something that's viable for Blizzard to actually implement? I don't really agree with the whole gear thing. And the reason I don't agree with that is simply because you already have an in-game equipment changer that will allow you to change through sets. So if you really want equipment that's designed for different things, so say you want a regemming or whatever, then that is viable. Admittedly, it does require you to carry two different sets of gear or just a bunch of spare gems. It would kind of be nice to have a system where you can set up a gem layout and then gem everything at once. That would be great and completely automated, because the current system is really, really fiddly. I don't know just how much Blizzard really wants you to be switching specs if you DPS in the middle of a dungeon. I think they're okay with you switching between maybe tanking and healing and DPS and things like that in a pinch, but it doesn't seem that they're quite as cool with you changing specs if you're DPS between fight to fight, and they have said in the past that they don't really want people changing all that much. That's the reason they don't have tri-spec. It's also the reason they don't have flexible spec or anything like that. Now, bear in mind, of course, that those gems can't be refunded, and they'd never do that. That would actually completely kill the economy of the game. Just think about how much of an impact that would actually have if gems were reusable. That would be silly, and of course that would really hurt jewel crafters. I'm a jewel crafter. I don't really sell gems, but still, I would prefer that wasn't the case. I'm also an enchanter, so there you go. Not cool with reusable either of those. It would be nice, though, if you could do it all in just one big file swoop. Even if you had to go back to the Reforger, and then you pressed a button that did all the reforging, and you saved a template, that would be awesome. Currently, the interface for it is pretty clunky, and I would appreciate if they came up with something a bit better. Okay, folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching Azeroth Daily. Please remember to upvote it. Oh god, I've been on Reddit for too long. Yes, thumb it up if you like it, and add it to favorites if it is, of course, your favorite. It is very much appreciated, and it does really help the channel, so thanks for doing that. And before I go, I have this week's topic for postcards from Azeroth for you. So this week is going to be a little bit more dress-up. As opposed to taking pictures of parts of Azeroth, I would like you to take a picture of your own character. However, I require you to dress up as close as possible to some kind of famous person. So do it in a direct, obvious way, or maybe do it in a metaphorical way if you like something clever, but please remember to leave a description, because if you just show me a pirate, I'm not automatically going to assume that you are Captain Jack Sparrow. You can go post all of those over on the Facebook page, click the Facebook link at the top of the channel if you so desire, or head over to facebook.com/cynicalbrit. So once again, I need pictures of your character dressed up as some kind of famous person, and an explanation as to who the hell you actually are. My name is TotalBiscuit, and I'll see you next time.